A lot of people seem to understand this interaction, but they don't seem to understand how it actually works. Because oftentimes when I talk about the steps of casting a spell, people bring up Lier, Disciple of the Drowned, and his interaction with adventure spells. Because most people know that a card with adventure only sees its characteristics on the stack. But most people who know the Lier interaction knows that Lier can give it flashback in the graveyard. But oftentimes the people that know this interaction don't seem to really know how it's working. I mean, most people seem to know that there are steps to casting a spell, and they start with step 1 right here, which is moving the spell to the stack, which they say is what's happening here. We're attempting to move Petty Theft to the stack as part of step 1. Now that it's on the stack, we can just move on to step 2, where we announce any choices we want to make. And so now that we're here, we can go ahead and announce that we're paying for the alternative cost of flashback. And then when we get to step 5, we check the legality of the spell, and by this point we've checked all the boxes and nothing seems to be out of order, so we can just let it move through, thus allowing Petty Theft to be cast with flashback. But a lot of those people are missing a huge crucial step, step 0. You see, we're only allowed to begin the process of casting a spell if a rule or an effect allows it, and no rule or effect doesn't allow it. So if there's no reason why we're legally allowed to move that spell to the stack in the first place, there's no way to even begin the spell casting process. Otherwise, I could just begin to move a spell to the stack by attempting to start the spell casting process at any time from any zone, including my opponent's hands, but we know we can't do that. I think most people forget that for each card type, there's rules for when that card is allowed to be cast. Like, obviously, I can't just move a sorcery to the stack during my opponent's combat step and say I'm attempting to cast the spell, and then just be like, oh, it goes back to my hand because of legality checks, ha 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 ha. It is only when there's a rule or an effect that gives us permission to start casting that spell, and there's no rule or effect that stops us from doing it. So the reason why Lier works with adventure spells isn't due to the legality check that happens later on during the spell casting process. This actually has nothing to do with it, because it's actually this hurdle that we need to cross first in order to even begin the process. So what exactly is the rule that gives Lier permission to cast adventure spells with flashback from the graveyard? 601.3E. Yes, this ruling has given me so much of a headache that I remember the number for it now. And basically what this says is that we're allowed to look at any alternative or subset of characteristics when determining if a spell is legal to cast. So what is happening here is that when we're determining whether this is legal to cast or not, we can look at the alternative characteristics of an adventure spell, which the rules for adventure does explicitly say they are alternative characteristics. So once we see those alternative characteristics, we can have those characteristics replace the object's characteristics for this determination. And then any continuous effects that would apply to that object once it has those characteristics are considered. So Lier can see the alternative characteristics of Petty Theft and see that it is an instant in the graveyard, and can apply its continuous effect to give it flashback. Now we have an effect that legally allows us to cast a spell from the graveyard, and we can take that first step to moving it to the stack and then going through the whole spell casting process.